Hey guys, what's going on? Jacob here. With PHP, we've learned the basics of programming languages and how to handle form data. Today we're going to take it a step further and talk about a couple of advanced topics, multidimensional arrays and dates. Simply put, multidimensional arrays are arrays inside arrays. It's arrays all the way down. These are used to store data in a table-like manner in arrays, and they're a key part of more complex programs. So they're more than worth talking about as we learn PHP. Now, of course, you're probably asking why you would need to use a multidimensional array. And that's a valid question when you're just starting out. But as I've worked more and more with web development, I've realized that I work with these a lot. And most of the time, I don't even realize it. Where you're most likely to use a multidimensional array is when using table data. So take, for example, this table. To turn this into a multidimensional array, we first make the table body an array. Then each of the rows will be their own array that we add to the main array. And the column headings become the keys for the inner array. And now you have an array of arrays. The simplest way to create a multidimensional array through code is to use this. But most of the time when you're creating a multidimensional array, you're probably looping through data, so it makes this solution not a viable option. So instead, we initialize the array outside of the loop. Then inside the loop, we create a secondary array with our data. And finally, we push that array into our main array using array push. There are two main ways to pull data out of a multidimensional array. The first is to use multiple indices to get the value out. So if I'm trying to get a value out from our table turned array from earlier, I would use the array variable, the first index, which is the row number, and then the second index, which is the column name. This can also be used with the for loop, but most of the time you're going to be looping through a multidimensional array. So for that, the preferred method is the for each loop. Each time you loop through the array, the value is one of the inner arrays, so you only need one index, in this case the column head, in order to pull out the value. Finally, let's try to sort multidimensional arrays. This is where things are going to get a bit tricky. Before we do anything, we have to create an array for the column that we're sorting by. In this example, we're sorting teams by wins, so we loop through each team and add the team's win total to the wins array. We preserve our team spot in the array by making its key in the new array the same as the old one. And then to sort the array, we use the array multisort function. This function accepts the column array, the order to sort, either ascending or descending, and then the main array. And then when we print our array, it will be sorted by wins. You can also sort by multiple columns by doing the same process with other columns and adding those columns in their orders between the first array in order and the main array in the function. Of course, you're also going to want to grab dates to display on your page. Whether it's a timestamp that a forum topic is posted or just the current date, PHP makes it easy to display dates on your web page. To get a date in PHP, all you need to do is use the date function. The date function accepts two parameters, the date format and the timestamp, which is the default value of right this very second. We'll talk more about date formats in the next section, but let's go over timestamps. The timestamp is of a certain moment in time, but you just can't use any old format. You first need to run it through the str2time function. This function accepts a date in words and numerals as its only parameter. So to get the timestamp for March 6, 2018, we would use this code. You can also use the word today in the function to get the timestamp for today. You can also control how the date looks using date format strings and the date format parameter. The date format uses different letter characters to determine what parts of the date to output. So D represents the day of the month without leading zeros, and DD does the same with leading zeros. Lowercase m gives the month in numerical form, while uppercase m gives the abbreviation of the month, and a single capital Y returns the year. There are so many more options that you can have with date and time formats. You can see them all in the link I have down in the description below. One great example of using a date on your site is with the copyright section on your webpage. Technically, you can do this with plain HTML, but then you have to update it every January 1st, and that's just a pain. But PHP can automatically update that year for you. So to get that, place the following line of code in your PHP file. We use the HTML character code for copyright and then echo out the year. Pretty neat. You can also set the time zone that all your dates and times will come from using the date default time zone set function. This accepts a parameter, a time zone, and sets all the dates and times in your PHP code to that time zone. This function needs to be called before you use the date function, and the time zone has to be just right. So, living in the central time zone, I would use the America-Chicago time zone parameter. You can find a list of all accepted parameters in the link I provided in the description below. Finally, let's talk about how to add and subtract time. Maybe you need to add a couple of days to a date or subtract a couple of days. For that, we'll need to use the date and str to time functions. First, you'll need to set the date that we're adding to or subtracting from. Then we'll run that date through the str to time function as the second parameter. The first parameter will be how much we're adding to or subtracting from the first date. This can be in either days, months, years, hours, minutes, or seconds. And then you can run the new timestamp through the date function to get your new date. And bam, now you've added or subtracted time from a date. Well, that's all for today. Next time we'll go over files, cookies, sessions, and errors in PHP. In the meantime, do you have any questions over what we went over today? If so, be sure to leave them down in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. But until next time, good luck and happy coding.